These holes in my brain scan signify low blood flow. I mean, just seeing this is fascinating. Every day, I practice shambhavi mahamudra Kriya, a yoga technique taught by Sadhguru.
Shambhavi mahamudra is a miraculous process because in 21 minutes, what it is doing to you is quite incredible.
But I wanted to see if the practice had an actual effect on my brain, and for that, I went to Dr. Daniel Amen.
Meet Dr. Daniel Amen, a celebrity psychiatrist, a brain health expert,
New York Times bestselling author of You Happier, founder of Amen Clinics, Dr. Daniel Amen.
Psychiatrist and clinical neuroscientist, Dr. Daniel Amen.
Basically, he scans your brain and tells you, he sees where it's firing.
Right.
He said, you 100% have anxiety. I can see it all in your brain. It's really interesting.
Okay.
I think you would really like it. I'm actually so interested to see how your brain looks.
This is Frank. Before is on the left, and after is on the right. And if you look at the top left image,
Are the holes gone?
what you see is the hole in the underside of the prefrontal cortex. Now, what does the hole mean? It means low activity, low blood flow in a very important part of your brain. And after meditation, it's better. That's a bit exciting.
Wait, in just 10 days. Wow.
And if we look at your cerebellum in the back bottom part of the brain, so your cerebellum is a bit disorganized on the first one and way more active and organized on the second one. Regular meditative practice can help keep your brain healthy. If I was you, I'd keep doing this.
Ever since I wrote my goals down with the pen, my dreams and reality have both been blending in. I just hope that in the end, my dad don't extend me all my dividends if it did.
And right before we started, you said, this is interesting. So I'm dying to know, what did you find?
So we do a study called brain SPECT imaging. SPECT looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. And it basically shows us three things: good activity, too little, or too much. So let's go to the second slide. And this shows us what a healthy scan looks like. So this is SPECT. Next slide. And the image on the left, we're looking at the outside surface of the brain, and it just be full, even, and symmetrical. The image on the right is the active scan, where blue is average activity, red and white are the most active areas of the brain. And in a healthy scan, the cerebellum, the back bottom part of your brain, should be the most active because it has half of the brain's neurons. And we're going to see that's a really important finding for you before and after. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. And this is Frank. Before is on the left, and after is on the right.
Oh, wow.
And if you look at the top left image,
Are the holes gone?
what you see is the hole in the underside of the prefrontal cortex. Before, it's got a hole. Now, what does the hole mean? It means low activity, low blood flow in a very important part of your brain. And after meditation, it's better. That's a bit exciting.
Wait, in just 10 days. Wow.
Well, probably it got better within 2 or 3. Because when you do the right thing, sort of the point of my book, Change Your Brain Every Day, you're making your brain better or you're making it worse with the choices, the activities, and the influences that happen in your life. And I love this so much. I published a study, actually 3 of them, on a Kundalini yoga form of meditation called Kriya, which is a 12-minute chanting meditation. And we saw that along with some interesting other findings. But it actually looks like your temporal lobes underneath your temples, behind your eyes, especially the right one.
Oh, yeah.
is fuller, fatter, healthier. And I like that so much. So change your brain, change your life. You should keep meditating.
Wow. Okay.
The next slide. Let's go to the next slide. Now here, again, blue is average activity. Red is the top 15%. White is the top 8%. And if we look at your cerebellum in the back bottom part of the brain. So again, this is the top left image.
Yeah.
Go all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
Your cerebellum is a bit disorganized
Yeah.
on the first one and way more active and organized on the second one.
Yeah.
And then there's a very interesting part of the brain called the posterior toward the back, cingulate gyrus. It's one of the first areas that actually dies in Alzheimer's disease. And yours is sleepy at rest, the first before you did anything, and it's much more active after the meditation. So it's here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, much more active. Right now, all around me, there are the frequencies of abundance and inner peace. You can have that and more. So take a second and let me tell you about Quantum Upgrade. Let's talk about like the Quantum Upgrade dashboard so people can see sort of how it works.
We use a very complicated, sophisticated system, which is, as far as we know, the most powerful source out there for quantum energy on Earth. You can pick from like, I think 26, 28 different frequencies now that we have. Inner peace, which you could leverage at night, for example. A lot of people do that. We have the Olympic performance. We have even something like weight management. We have the abundance prosperity. The service actually starts like within 5 minutes, the energy you will notice it starts ramping up. In the dashboard, you can select the Hawkins level for the day and pick between a level from 500 to I think like 1,200 or something like that. Just start low, go on 600 because it's not about faster, stronger, more powerful. Best is what feels good to you.
Like men's booster, women's booster, inflammation support, testosterone booster.
It's activating that testosterone actually can increase again. And 5 of these studies, and it showed in 46% to 100% acceleration in wound healing. We do have a free trial that we want to offer all your listeners. So code Frankly, you get 15-day free trial.
And the group that's sponsored by Kundalini Yoga Research is the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, because they thought a regular meditative practice could help keep your brain healthy over time. So if I was you, I'd keep doing it.
Keep doing this. Yeah.
I'd keep doing it.
Is it okay to suggest that doing this could prevent the oncoming of something like that, like Alzheimer's?
I wouldn't go quite that far, but what I would say, meditating as part of an overall brain health practice is a good strategy to help you prevent aging and age-related memory decline.
Yeah. Now, if somebody is not meditating, what would you say? Because I know 8 years ago when I did my first scan with you, it was the same thing. You said there was low activity in the back. You told me to take fish oil, I think it was, and play table tennis. Is that still the recommendation?
Certainly part of the recommendations, right? I think today I would say if you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And probably my last 7 or 8 books, I talk about bright minds, right? Like B is for blood flow. Low blood flow is the #1 brain imaging predictor of Alzheimer's disease, and you don't want it. And so what gives you low blood flow? Being sedentary, being overweight, drinking excessive caffeine, alcohol, marijuana, not exercising. And so increase blood flow by getting rid of those things, exercise, omega-3 fatty acids, beets, oregano, cayenne pepper, cinnamon, ginkgo.
What about niacin?
Niacin can be helpful too.
I have, this is sort of like a testimonial for you. I mean, people listening probably already know about your work, but one of my clients said she wanted some sessions for her son, and she had been with me for years. So I worked with her son for a while. He's, I think, 19 now. And this is energy work. So then I said, hey, after 3 sessions, I said, I think now you should actually look at his brain and also do some physical support too, not all energy work. And she said, okay, what do you recommend? And I said, go to Amen Clinics, get a brain scan, and just see what's going on. And she did. The recommendation was, and to give some backstory, he was depressed, anxious, playing video games like 10 hours a day. And the recommendation was 40 sessions of hyperbaric. And he did them, I think it was like, I don't know, 1 or 2 a week for 40 sessions. And complete difference. She said he's out walking every single day. He's happy. He wants to do things. He's studying. Like just a completely different person. Yeah.
So much. You know, if we could get away from these are mental health problems to change it to brain health problems. Nobody wants a mental illness. Everybody wants a better brain. But then you have to do things to make your brain better. And playing video games for 10 hours a day just wears out the dopamine centers, the pleasure centers in your brain. It makes you depressed. And, you know, people do that and then smoke pot or drink alcohol, eat processed foods. I mean, you can see why we're having this tidal wave of mental health problems. But when you see it as brain health, well, I meditate for the health of my brain. I eat for the health of my brain. I exercise for the health of my brain. I put down my gadgets for the health of my brain.
Yeah, you know, with Kriya Yoga, for example, there's like a lot of rules with it. Like you have to wait 4 hours after you've eaten, things like that. The one that I do, shambhavi, mahamudra, Kriya. And because of that, sometimes I'm like, God, I really just don't want to do it today. Like I'd rather, because then I'm like, okay, I have to like not eat dinner or whatever. But now seeing the brain is going to be a lot more like, now I can see what you're saying, because I'll think of this next time I'm like, God, I really don't want to do it this morning or tonight. You know, I'll remember, like, look at the difference it made in a week. And like you said, maybe even before a week.
Well, and we didn't even talk about this ahead of time, right? I mean,
no, this is my first time seeing this.
First time you were seeing it. And I'm just so excited because it fits what has really become the mission of my life, is how can we help you have a better brain? Because with a better brain comes a better life.
Yeah. And obviously it's not like fully, you know, what's the word? Like I didn't like, okay, make sure to keep all conditions exactly the same. But as much as I could, like I actually didn't take any supplements before or in between just to make sure I was like baseline, you know, and I tried to just keep everything the same, you know. But yeah, I mean, just seeing this is fascinating. And what can, because I told you about my client who took her 19-year-old, your new book, and you've already had so many bestsellers, is about raising mentally strong kids, right? And I think the subtitle I wrote down here is How to Combine the Power of Neuroscience with Love and Logic to Grow Kind, Confident, Responsible, and Resilient Children and Young Adults. Can you tell me about that? Like why write this book and what were why children and young adults?
Well, they're in historic trouble. The incidence of brain and mental health problems is skyrocketing. It was at epidemic proportions before the pandemic, and then everything doubled. It's interesting, we do online a brain health assessment. Go to brainhealthassessment.com. It'll tell you what your brain type is, and there's 16 different brain types. And it's based on these 5: balanced, spontaneous, sort of my ADD group, persistent, my OCD group, sensitive, depression group, and cautious or anxious group. Before the pandemic, 44% of people who took it, we've had 7 million people take it, were balanced, which means they didn't have ADD, OCD, anxiety, or depression. After the pandemic, 44% of people are type 8, which is actually a combination of spontaneous, persistent, sensitive, and cautious. It's like something happened.
What were the percentages before and after?
44% were type 1, sort of the best type to have. And afterwards, 44% of these 16 types, 44% are 8, which means we're in trouble as a society. But the loneliness, the isolation, the fear, the virus itself, perhaps even the vaccine, were not great for brain function.
Yeah.
And if you add that to the social unrest and the political divide, social media, which is clearly not your friend, it ends up with the disaster we're in. So as I saw this escalating problems in kids, I'm like, well, what's the answer to that? And the answer is a better parent-child relationship. It's a more effective parent-child relationship. Now, I'm a neuroscientist, so I should go, the answer is really in the brain, and that's part of it. But at its core, the answer is in bonding, attachment, and the relationship you have with your children. And, you know, when you have to, here in California, get a license to go fishing. You have to get a license to drive, but you don't have to have a license to have a child or raise a child. And they don't come with an instruction manual. So I thought, you know, Dr. Fay, who wrote it with me, he's the president of the Love and Logic Institute. Let's write the instruction manual.
Dr. Phil actually called it that. I wrote it down here. Dr. Phil called your book a science-based manual for parents. My question was, is that how you see it? But clearly, yes. You know, what's interesting is actually, since we did do this Kriya, and it actually comes from Sadhguru, one thing that he says that I actually liked is he says, don't raise your children because they're all individual. Let them show you who they are, but create the environment, create the space, create a nurturing and safe place for them to show you who they are.
I love that. And one of the things we talk about is don't do too much for them. And I think when I was a young parent, so I have kids that are 14 all the way to 47. So I have 6 of them. And I'm a very different parent for the 14-year-old. Early on, I think because I had low self-esteem, I would get self-esteem by doing things for them. And then I realized I'm stealing their self-esteem. So to make myself feel important or feel good, yes, I can help you with this, yes, I can help you with that. What I was doing was stealing their self-esteem, because self-esteem ultimately comes from feeling competent. And when Chloe, she's our 20-year-old, was young, she's got red hair like her mother. And so they were banging heads. And Tana, my wife, wouldn't listen to me. But she found this program called Parenting with Love and Logic. Dramatically changed things. Because in Love and Logic, you allow kids to pay consequences for their decisions. And so they were fighting. She's in 2nd grade, Chloe, and they were fighting about homework and be like hour after hour. And I'm like whispering to my wife, you've done 2nd grade. This is for her to do. Get out of this fight. And so she took Parenting with Love and Logic, and she realized she'd done 2nd grade. And one night she announced to Chloe, it's like, sweetheart, I'm never gonna ask you to do your homework again. I've done 2nd grade. And if you're okay with the consequences of not doing your homework, like the teacher will be mad at you, you won't be able to go out to recess, or if you really don't do it, you'll make new friends when you repeat 2nd grade. It's on you. And Chloe got so angry. She said, that doesn't make sense. I never said I was gonna do my homework. Just not gonna do it now. And stormed off. 20 minutes later, she came back. And now she's a senior at Chapman University. No one's ever asked her to do her homework again. She gets straight A's. She holds all of the anxiety. But you know what she also holds? All of the competence.
It's so, I'm like laughing in my head as you say this, because I'm just thinking about my parents, my like Lebanese parents. Not once, I don't think, ever asked me if I did my homework.
I never did.
They never did. I think they just assumed. But what's funny is that worked for my brother and sister. They were both like top of their class from elementary to college. or university. For me, it didn't work. So I was like, oh, good, no one's checking, like, you know, so I never really paid attention. I got really serious in college, universities, like when I fell in love with journalism.
When it became important to
Exactly.
you,
Yeah.
as opposed to important for them.
Yeah, yeah.
And the step one in raising mentally strong kids is know what you want. This is step one for every frickin' thing in your life, whether it's marriage, work, money, raising children. What do you want? Well, I want to be different than my dad. I have horrible dad stories. One I got recently that I'm still actually fairly traumatized by. Well, I'll tell it.
Yeah, can you? I was like, I don't know if I can intrude, but I would love to know it.
So my dad died about 4 years ago, and I'm one of 7 children. And my mother is, you know, she's been one of our best friends our whole life. And she's like, I don't like being alone. I want one of you to spend the night with me every week.
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, when there's 7 kids, it's like, well, once a week. And Sunday was my night. And I don't know how this got brought up, but she said, when you were 4, we had a new pool put in, and I took you for swimming lessons, and the teacher hit you. And that horrified me. And so I brought you home. I told your dad what was going on. He picked you up and threw you in the pool and said, swim.
That's how I learned how to swim. My uncle did that to me.
Or drown.
It's literally
swim or drown. Can you imagine the psychological impact?
I had the same experience with Dr. Amen.
And that's what my wife said. She said, yeah, a lot of people in their generation did that.
Yeah.
Swim or drown. That's insane. That is not, it's like,
Is it insane? I'm now thinking that's normal, but maybe it's not.
It's not normal.
Oh, see?
Right? And I asked my wife, I said, okay, well, if I did that to Chloe,
wow.
She goes, it'd been the last time you ever saw her.
Whoa, yeah.
So, what kind of parent do you want to be? Back to step number 1 now that I've just re-traumatized. I have to do a little haven.
Yeah, exactly. It's an EMDR.
And so what kind of parent do you want to be? And for me, I want to be present. I want to be firm, because I know the research. I want to be kind. And I want to raise responsible, resilient, kind people.
Mm.
And so whenever I do something as a parent, whenever I say something, does it fit the goals I have for myself and for my children? Now, it's not a good thing, oh, I want them to be a doctor. And it's a very bad goal, right? You want to grow them to be who they're meant to be,
right.
who they are,
Yeah.
right? But everything stems from what do I want? And if I want them to be responsible and they steal, it's like, oh, you have to bring that back.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to own up to it and tell the manager, and we'll deal with whatever consequences there are, as opposed to protecting them. Or, you know, I didn't get my homework done, I didn't get this assignment done, you have to do it for me. It's like, are you insane? It's like, no, I can't do your work. I already did 3rd grade, or I already did 7th grade. I guess you'll figure out how to be more prepared next time. Mm-hmm. And if Chloe, and people are going to think this is really harsh, but it creates competence. If she forgot her homework, nobody brought it to her at school. Mm-hmm. If she forgot her lunch, nobody brought it for her. Being hungry a little bit is good because she'll remember to be responsible. If she forgot a jacket or thought us, oh no, I'm not taking a jacket to school. No one's bringing it to her. So important to let them pay the consequences when the price is inexpensive.
Right, okay.
So step 1 is know what you want. Step 2 is bonding, right? So I sound harsh. It's totally not harsh. It's bonding requires 2 things. And I don't know if you got it, but I got none of this when I was growing up. Time, actual physical time. I'm one of 7. Right, Dad was never home and Mom was overwhelmed. 20 minutes a day. And did you know, there's this crazy statistic. In the 50s, mothers on average spent an hour and a half to 2 hours individually with their kids.
Wow.
And now it's less than half.
So when you say bonding, individually,
Time.
but individually?
Well, if you're one of 7,
Okay.
you have to do things together.
Yeah.
But I did have about 20 minutes a week where I would just read with my mom, and I was a good reader. And then a willingness to listen. And I don't know in your family, but in mine, people talked over each other and nobody was really very good.
Yes. Same.
And so I teach, Charles and I in the book teach about active listening. That when they say something, don't tell them that's not the way to think. Just repeat it and then be quiet, right? Parents talk too much. Be quiet and listen. And so the exercise, the best exercise, the most powerful, effective exercise in the book is called special time. 20 minutes a day with your child. Do something they want to do. And during that time, no commands, no questions, no directions. So many women today feel guilty that they're not spending enough time. And I'm like, you don't need a lot of it, but you need it consistently, 20 minutes. And I had a literary agent, and he had his children later in life, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, I have a 2-year-old, her name is Laura, and she never wants to be with me. I come home, she ignores me, and it sort of hurts my feelings. I said, well, it's probably because you're ignoring her. And he said, what do you mean? And he said, that's a girl thing. Girls want their moms. I'm like, no, you're ignoring her. I said, do this. And I told him about special time. And he goes, oh, that won't work. Because he tended to be argumentative and oppositional. And I'm like, oh, great, you represent an idiot. Maybe I should rethink this with you. I said, do it, it works. I'll call you in 3 weeks. 3 weeks later, I called him up. I'm like, hey, Carl, this is Daniel. Daniel, she won't leave me alone. As soon as I walk in the door, she grabs my leg, wants her time, and all she wants to do is be with me.
Wow.
And that's how it is. And, I just imagine, perhaps if I didn't get thrown in the pool, if he sat on the floor with me periodically, would we have a better relationship? Now, later in life, we had a really great relationship, and he was my best friend before he died. But it's not the way to parent.
Hey, I just really quickly want to tell you about the necklace that I'm wearing. You might see me wearing it in a lot of these episodes. I actually give it to many of the guests too. They're from Leela Quantum technology, and as you can see, there are little capsules inside that are supercharged with what they call quantum energy. And it's just like walking around with one of the full-sized infinity blocks with you wherever you go. So you can get those on the website too and be quantumly upgraded wherever you go. Wow, I have too much to say about everything you just said. One thing that comes to mind is like my sister, I see, because we grew up with, like, they overly coddled us if we needed anything. Like you said, you wouldn't take her jacket to school. They would bring like 10 jackets if I forgot mine, But there were other things where it was harsh, like the thrown in the pool thing. That happened to me too, but not with my dad. But my sister now, I see her with her kids, and there's so much bonding time. I spent like a few days with them. They live in like Thousand Oaks area. And they had every single night, they would do like a show and tell with their kids. So they sit like they're the audience, and the 2 kids like have to show and tell something, and then they read them a book and they go to bed. And it's like a whole 30, 40-minute thing every night before they go to bed. And I thought, wow, like she's doing things so different from how we did it.
It's a great investment. And I know Tana read to Chloe self-help books. From the time she was 3, they're in bed reading, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Kids. And but it's that reading time. See, it's actual physical time. Yeah. So if you want to protect them against this wave of mental health problems, it's the relationship. It's listening, it's time, it's mutual respect. But at the same time, it's not solving all their problems because you feel guilty.
Yeah. I know one of the things, I don't know if it was with Chloe or not, one of the things you like to tell is the story of you would ask when they were little, is this good for your brain or bad, right? And then, for example, avocado, is it good for you or bad? Well, is it on toast or, or whatever, What is another tip that you like to share with parents that can kind of help, get their kids thinking about that?
Well, I also wrote another kids book called The Most Important Lesson I Learned from a Penguin. And it's about noticing what you like a lot more than what you don't like. And we did a study recently on negativity bias. Are you negative or are you positive? People who are negative increases the risk of virtually every mental illness. And so today is going to be a great day. So why is today going to be a great day for you? And when you put them to bed, what went well today? And just start at the beginning of your day and just go hour by hour. Just look for what went well. So every night is a treasure hunt. And I've done that.
I was going to ask, do you still do it now or no?
I do it for 12 years. I've done it every night. I put myself to bed, I say a prayer, and then I go, what went well? And there's so many cool things that I go, I didn't even pay attention to that. But that's so cool. And the night my dad died, this was 4 years ago, I went to bed, and it was probably the worst day of my life. And when I went to bed, I went, what went well? And the voice, we all have the voice, the critic in our head, went, seriously? We're doing this tonight? But because I've done it over and over again, see, your brain does what you allow it to do. I went to an image of my mom and the police officer. I'd been doing a training with the Newport Beach Police Department, so I knew the police officer. And it was hysterical, this interaction between them, because he said, Officer Darling, Mrs. Amon, because he died at home, we have to do an investigation. And, my dad's 91, she's 89. And she looked at him with a straight face and go, do you think I was cheating on him? Do you think I had him killed? It was so funny. And so my mind went to that. And then my mind went to the, dozens of texts I got from my friends who love me and love my dad. And then I just thought about holding his hand. It was so soft before the mortuary took him away. And then I went to sleep because I practice positivity bias training. And it helps me. It didn't mean I didn't grieve. I still grieve. But I'm managing my mind rather than my mind torturing me.
That's beautiful.
Focus. Focus on what you like more than what you don't. And that book is it's a story of a penguin and how do you train penguins? You notice what you like more than what you don't. You give them fish, you give them affection.
I'm going to try that tonight. And hopefully every night. What about tantrums with kids? Because, based on what you kind of explained of not overly coddling, let them figure it out. What if, this child is 6 years old or 7 years old and is like, you don't love me and, whatever, I wish you weren't my parents. In that moment, it's like, I see parents reacting to that. What would you tell a parent to do in that moment?
Not much. Except I have a rule with tantrums. If you have a tantrum to get your way, the answer is no. It's always going to be no. Go for it. And then you have to make sure you don't give into it, right? Tantrums happen because parents reinforce them. Oh, you're upset. And they do it in a very public place. I remember once Chloe was in a toy store or something and said, stop hitting me. And Dana wasn't even close to her. Stop hitting me. And I was like, and what did I say? And the answer is no. And you have to be okay with being embarrassed so you don't unintentionally reinforce the negative behavior. Now, if you're doing the things I suggest in the book and the child is still way out of control, somebody should look at their brain.
I was gonna say, because what if it's a brain thing that's causing these tantrums?
Well, so think of it like hardware and software.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the parenting program is really a software program. We have to make sure the hardware works. You know, if they have autism or they have ADHD or they're bipolar or they've had a traumatic brain injury. But these parenting strategies work. And when I was a child psychiatry fellow, so I did my training in Hawaii, the University of Hawaii and Tripler Medical Center. For the first year with ADHD kids, they taught me to do play therapy with them. We'd blow stuff up and I'd be a good listener. And nobody got better. Well, the second year with that same group of kids, they taught us parent training. And all the kids got better when we got the parents to act better. When we got the parents focused, got them intentional, and all the kids got better. I'm like, that's the answer. The answer is in this bonding relationship and getting the head of the family to act like a good CEO as opposed to their sibling that was a bit out of control.
I always make this comparison that is like actually kind of funny, but at first I didn't mean it to be funny, but I'd be like, I get it, because you know, me and my cats, I would talk to parents and they like would tell me a story and I'd be like, yeah, I do that with my cats. And now I realize because of my camera crew used to always tell me like, Frank, it's not the same. But what did remind me of that just now is I'd be like, I see these things on Instagram or friends telling me like their cats did like, you know, they chew on cords and they just pee on plants and stuff. And I was like, or like wake them up at 5 a.m. And I said, my cats have never done any of those things. In fact, they go play outside. We have a private yard. And then when I call them, they come running in. When I say, hey guys, we're going inside, I go, like everything. And my friend like a few days ago was like, well, that's you. You know, you from when they were babies, like trained them to be that way. So anyway. That's what I was thinking about when you said about parenting.
Humans have in their prefrontal cortex, so that's 1/3 of their brain, largest in humans than any other animals, part of our brain that makes us human. Focus, forethought, judgment, impulse control, organization, planning, empathy. 30% of the human brain, 3% of the cat's brain. So you have optimized their 3%.
Oh, wow. That's great. I'll take it. So, actually, you already answered my next question about the tantrum, so I'm going to leave that. How do you feel about, I was thinking about this on the way here, because I knew I was getting my scans. I haven't, like I said, taken any supplements or certain things that I would use, like modafinil, maybe if I'm working like 8 hours, 9 hours, and I want to be super focused, I might take like a little half of a modafinil. How do you feel about, you know, nootropics or things like that to help?
I own a supplement company, so I'm sort of a huge fan.
But yours are a little different, right? I mean, I have your probiotics, I have your ginkgo, but I mean, like something like modafinil, something more like...
So it wouldn't be my first choice,
okay,
but it would be a choice. It'd probably be my 6th or 7th choice. So if you have trouble focusing, and remember, your scan without meditation, you have a sleepy cerebellum and you have a sleepy left frontal lobe. So modafinil will activate both. We did a scan before and after modafinil, we go, it sort of lights up your brain. So, but meditation does too.
Yeah.
And so I imagine if you continued your meditation practice, you'd have less need for modafinil, but have it in case.
Right. Maybe like the bigger moments.
Yeah,
you know?
and modafinil's safe, and nobody's ever gotten into trouble in my life with modafinil. But rhodiola, ashwagandha, ginseng, we make something called focus and energy, and I just read a testimonial today. This guy drives from Southern California to Montana every 2 weeks. And he says he never leaves without the focus and energy because it gives him the sustained attention he needs to make that drive be safe and okay. But you know, if I try exercise, meditation, supplements, modafinil, you know, I'd try a stimulant, consort or Adderall, because it would fit your brain. But if you had like a super busy brain, no. That would be like pouring gas.
That's why it's so important to know your brain, right?
And how
Yeah.
do you know unless you look?
Yeah.
People call me crazy. It was on KTLA on
I saw that with my friend Lauren Lister, really good friend.
So
She's the one of the reporters there.
So it's so much fun. And Casey Montoya, I did her scan. She goes, some of your colleagues say what you do is a scam. And I'm like, well, is it a scam before you drug somebody to actually know what their brain is like? Or is it a scam to make diagnoses based on symptom clusters with no biological data? Where last year there were 337 million prescriptions for antidepressants. It's like getting more data is not a scam. It's a rational medical thing to do. What other medical specialists do you know that never look at the organ they treat, right? That's crazy. I'm a psychiatrist. I know crazy and how they make diagnosis. That's crazy.
And you've had, I like the stories you've told before about doctors who have like publicly called you out, who then later, write research papers with you and write books with you.
Such a good month for me. So this month, Brad Peterson, who's now child psychiatry at Chaka, was at Columbia, told 2020 I should be arrested for my work. And I'm like, whoa. And when the reporter, Richard Avia, asked me about that, I'm like, well, last week someone told me I should win a Nobel Prize. This week you're telling me arrested, sort of keeps me down. Manuel Trujillo, who helped me start our New York clinic, was Brad Peterson's mentor when he went to NYU, and so he got us together. And this month, Dr. Peterson and I have a paper coming out on SPECT and depression in translational psychiatry, one of the Nature journals. So pretty excited about that. And then the APA, I've been sort of a war with the American Psychiatric Association. Shouldn't look at the brain. Like, y'all are insane. Somehow their television department voted me an APA thought leader and created a whole video about me.
Wow, yeah. What was the award they gave you again? The
APA thought leader. So they made me part of their APA thought leader series that they show at their annual convention.
I mean, I went to a gala that you had with Dr. Oz a few weeks ago, and some of the people I met there were like, oh yeah, I was trying to be sober for years and then had my brain scanned and suddenly it made sense and I could do it. How much more data can you get before people are just like, okay, got it.
It's hard, but I understand it. If I'm right, and I am, that means what hundreds of thousands of psychiatrists, family doctors, therapists, is what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And they're flying blind, and they don't tell you thank you when you say you're hurting people.
Yeah, it just takes different personalities because I get it. Like even with it's such a different thing, obviously, but like astrology. In Vedic astrology, they go by the precession of the stars. So actually, where are the stars right now? Western astrology is off by 24 degrees because it's going by the Gregorian calendar. It's not taking into account. It was accurate 1,000 years ago, but it moves, and they're not taking that into account. And I had somebody who I did an interview with who's a Vedic astrologer, and he's like, I get it. I came from the Western, and he's like, and it's really hard to tell somebody who's doing something and has been doing it for 20 years, like, hey, your thing is off. Like, you're off by 24 degrees. And it becomes a part of your identity. And you're like, no, this is the way it's done. Rather than just doing like what this guy I was interviewing did and just said, oh yeah, you're right, this system works better. Let me learn that system. This is my last thing, but I just kind of wanted to go over your, I really like this, the brain damaging habits to avoid. There was 8 of them that you posted recently. One was conventional cleaning products. Can we talk about that?
Well, read the label, right? I mean, sophisticated health people read food labels, but they don't read product labels. Mm-hmm. Whatever you put on your body goes into your body and affects your body. And the pandemic was just a disaster because everybody went for Lysol.
Oh, right. And you're in your home, so you're around the chemicals all day.
Right. But
Yeah.
if you actually read the label, there are lots of toxic things. So I actually do a lot of work with earth-friendly products. I love them. They make the Ecos brand in your store. And they actually think about, how can I accomplish this cleaning task without poisoning the people?
Oh, the actual Eco brand? Yeah.
Ecos, yeah.
Yeah, I use that for detergent, dish, and laundry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're awesome.
Yeah.
And I have no financial investment in
Mhm.
them, but they're good for the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And good for you, because a lot of these brands, the big brands, they have parabens, phthalates, EDTA, fragrance, things that are hormone disruptors.
Yeah.
You don't want to disrupt your hormones. I mean, that could give you a lot of issues, both health and cultural.
Yeah, plastic bottles too. I stopped drinking water from plastic bottles years ago. Now they're all delivered in glass to my house. It made a huge difference because of that. The hormone disruptors, artificial food coloring and sweeteners. So I guess that's the same thing, but now we're looking at food, right? Blasting headphones. Why?
Well, because it'll damage your hearing, and your hearing is a brain function. And so you don't want to overload the circuits. And I have some trouble hearing because I was in the Army, and so I was around a lot of blasts. But hearing loss is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease.
Interesting. Okay. And this one, I'm guilty of this one. Like, I think for the last 2 years, I've only started to slowly come out of my cocoon. But social isolation. Tell me about that one.
It's a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, for depression.
Do you think that's why maybe this was sleepy?
Maybe, although it would have been good to get it when you were 16 to see
Oh,
what
okay.
it was like.
All right.
You said you're a little bit of a late bloomer, as was
Yeah.
I, for sure. But the isolation is not going to help your brain be healthy. And when you're isolated, your brain actually does a lot less work. So when you're in a social situation, your brain has to work a lot harder. You have
That
to
makes sense.
filter things, you have to respond, you have to think, and that's good for your brain. You have more purpose that's beyond just you. And when you're isolated, often there's an area of the brain called the default mode network, sort of the chatter in your head. And that tends to get busy, which then puts you at more risk for anxiety and depression.
Oh, it gets more busy when you're alone? Yeah, that makes sense. What about too much screen time? I mean, we hear that a lot, but why is it bad for your brain?
Because it begins to deaden the pleasure centers in your brain. It's almost like you get thrilled to death with Instagram or TikTok or waiting for the next notification. And I think putting limits around that is absolutely essential. And you have to know that Microsoft and TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, they're not your friends. That they're vying for mind share. How much of your mind can they take? And they know if you're afraid, you're more likely to pay attention. And so they end up feeding you things that piss you off, things that make you angry, things that make you upset. People who watch the news, for example, in the morning are 27% less happy in the afternoon.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think kids should get screens until high school. But the more you can, and school systems are giving them to first grade.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, are you all insane? I mean, like, don't you read the research? It's sort of like when you go to the hospital and they feed
Give you Jell-O and
Jell-O and food.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, you should know better.
But that's the thing, what is it? Is it just money profit? I mean, like the hospital thing, for example, they do know, of course they know. So like,
Of course they know, but it's not cost effective.
It makes no sense.
And it's an evil ruler strategy. In my book, The End of Mental Illness.
How to be a ruler, right? How to be an evil genius? Yeah.
Yeah, I have 62 evil ruler strategies. If I was an evil ruler and I wanted to create mental illness, what would I do? And there's this great example. If I was an evil ruler, I would take Girl Scouts and Girl Scout cookies and put them outside
Yeah,
the
so true.
dispensary. And there's actually a story in San Diego where this, 11-year-old Girl Scout sold 350 boxes of Girl Scout cookies outside the pot dispensary.
Wow.
Evil ruler genius.
That's pretty good. Well, that actually goes into my next one, too much sugar, which I know I avoid sugar. I think other than natural food, I can't imagine when I've had sugar in the last few years. But I didn't know, I wasn't doing it for my brain. So what is it doing to the brain?
Well, it increases inflammation. It's addictive. It has no nutrients, and ultimately it will shrink your brain. So there's this one study where they took rats and they gave them a head injury. So not nice, but they gave them a head injury. One group, they gave them their normal healthy food. The other group, they gave them their normal healthy food with fructose, so with fruit sugar. At the end of 3 weeks, the group that had the healthy food recovered and could run their mazes that they knew. The other group at 3 weeks was still confused. Wow. But yet, what is on the sidelines of most football games? Gatorade, which is sugar water.
Yeah. Even like when you go to the health food store, if you look at the electrolytes, the first ingredient is sugar. So there's 2 brands that I like, but I get them online. What about so there's 2 more on your list. Lack of movement throughout the day, which I think you already spoke about a little bit, but why does that affect the brain?
Well, because 20% of the blood flow in your body, 20% of the oxygen goes to your brain. And if you're not moving, that makes your blood vessels firmer, less pliable, get less blood flow. So you gotta move. And exercise boosts dopamine, so you focus better. And it boosts serotonin, so you feel happier. And you're more flexible. So if you have an oppositional, defiant, disorder kid, no matter what you say, they say the opposite. Take them on a walk before you talk to them about anything important. Don't say anything until about 10 minutes into the walk. Their serotonin's up a little bit. They'll be more flexible and be able to deal with them more effectively.
And what about, this is a huge one for me. And I want to ask you if you can take it too far the other way, because in my 20s, I didn't sleep at all, maybe like 4 hours a day, because I was working for Good Morning America, Nightline 2020, and I'd be in 8 states a month at least. They'd be like, hey, there's a volcano eruption. Okay, Dancing with the Stars. Now you're going to the Oscars. Tomorrow there's a mass shooting. It was constant. And I barely slept. So now, and I'm only noticing it, I'd say in the last year that I sleep probably, I'm overcompensating for that. So do you think that, first of all, why is sleep so important for your brain? And then secondly, can you take it too far?
So when you sleep, your brain cleans and washes itself. And so if you're not sleeping 7 hours, it doesn't have time to do a deep cleaning, and trash builds up and you can't think. Can you take it too far? Probably. You want to figure out what's your sweet spot. At what level do you feel the best? And if you need 12 hours, probably your iron's low or your thyroid's not working like it should. So I think 7.5 to 10 hours is fine. And I find more and more, I'm like, 8:30, I'm gonna go to bed. Just to sort of wind down. So if I'm asleep at 9, then I'm up at 5 or I'm up at 6. And for me, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I did yesterday, 9 to 5. But I guess what I mean by too much is now the routine is so, and this might be a biohacker thing too, but I'm so serious about sleep that I'll not go to things because I'm no, that would interrupt my sleep a little bit. Or, oh, that's too early, so I'm not gonna, do this. And then what I'll do is I have my routine, my earplugs, my red light, all my night lights are red. And then, just the whole thing, I take it so seriously.
It's because you love yourself.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's only a problem if it's causing problems in your life.
Right.
Causing problems in your relationships, in your work, in your money, in your health. Sounds like you love yourself and you're prioritizing your health. Most people in our society don't do that, and they'll shame you for doing it. And it's no, it's not my priority. What's your priority.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anything you want to leave us with? I know that brain assessment is probably a good place for people to start, right? Your online assessment.
Yeah, brainhealthassessment.com,
Mm-hmm.
or they can also get Raising Mentally Strong Kids anywhere great books are sold. And if they want to take a deep dive, they can go to loveandlogic.com.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll link all of that. Cool. Thank you, doctor. As always.
Frank, what a joy. I'm so grateful.
This is incredible to see.
Ever since I wrote my goals down with the pen, my dreams and reality have both been blending in. I just hope that in the end, my debt don't extend me on my dividends. If it did, I'd have to keep pivoting. Turn the other cheek and down another dose of adrenaline. I don't need to pretend to live a life